Would you please be seated? When the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday rolls around each year, I make it a point either to reread or listen again to his stirring "I Have a Dream" speech. It was delivered during the March on Washington on August 28, 1963. That day, more than 250,000 Americans gathered to voice their grievance before the nation of the mistreatment of African American citizens through decades, if not centuries, of discrimination, segregation, and impoverishment. It is worth noting the striking contrast between that day of protest in 1963 and a more recent day of protest in 2001, January of that year. The former a peaceful gathering, the latter filled with hatred and violence. In 1963, there was no destruction of property, no police officers were assaulted, no felony arrests were made. Indeed, a theme for the day was the call to non-violence, as King himself intoned, "We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again," he continued, "we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force." Standing before the Lincoln Memorial, King challenged the nation to live up to its founding ideals and to realize the full promise of democracy. And then toward the end of that speech, his rhetoric, it began to soar. "I have a dream," he said, "that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Over and over again, he repeats the line, "I have a dream," summoning a vision of reconciliation as descendants of slaves and slave owners share in table fellowship, as black children and white children join hands as sisters and brothers. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream." Power was on display that day. The power of love, the power of hope, and it made a difference. Laws touching parts of everyday life were enacted in the years following. Voting rights, public accommodations, housing, dramatic results that some of us are old enough to remember. The grocery store closest to my childhood home, it had a sign stating that blacks could only enter the store if they were wearing a maid's uniform. That sign came down, not immediately, I must say, but it came down. The first house Peggy and I bought 20 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act had a deed restriction to prevent a sale to a non-white family. That clause was no longer enforceable. Good for us, we later sold the home to a Hispanic couple. We could see the results of this great movement towards freedom and justice. No one would pretend that we had reached the mountaintop, but progress was being made, still striving to become a more perfect union. We became better than we were before. Come and see. Well, that's a line from our gospel lesson today. Come and see what is happening. Come and see what's taken place and where it is led. His goodness on offer. His love being shared, His truth being proclaimed. There are blessings to see new possibilities to experience, new life to enjoy, and you do not want to miss out. And that's why Philip wants Nathanael to meet Jesus. You've just heard that story read. He does not want his friend to miss out, and so he tells him with great excitement, "We have found him about whom Moses and the law and the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Philip is but one in a succession of people whom Jesus meets at this early point in his ministry. First Andrew, and then Simon Peter. Next comes Philip. None of these men seem to require much convincing, but Nathanael does. He is the first one to voice any doubts. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Well, here's the thing. Nathanael, he's from that neighborhood. He knows what he's talking about, and he can't imagine anyone special arising from such a lowly place. And besides, he knows the Hebrew Scriptures. No prophecies about Nazareth in his Bible, or a ruler or a Messiah who might come from there. His question, though, it may sound abrupt. Can anything good come from Nazareth? But his friend Philip is not left wondering what's going on inside Nathanael's mind. And, well, neither are we. Nathanael, he just puts it all out there. Turns out Jesus likes that. When Nathanael finally meets him, Jesus explains why here's a truly an Israelite in whom there's no deceit. Here's a man who speaks his mind. So often in the churches, we don't put it all out there. We're a bit reserved in our feelings, perhaps reticent to voice our doubts or to share our struggles. And what a relief it can be when someone punctures that bubble that we tend to keep around ourselves. It's so lovely, I must say, in this congregation to participate in that weekly public sharing of joys and concerns. Those hard things in your life, an illness, a family member you worry about, a challenge you or a friend must face. And that doesn't mean you don't keep some things to yourself, but the invitation is there, and many of you do take advantage of this opportunity to have the congregation share with you in prayer. And let me assure you that if it is hard for you to do so publicly, and I'm speaking to you folks online as well, if it's hard for you, there are other ways to reach out. Call the church office, let us know. Call or email me or Amber, or you may reach out to a member of the care circle, and some of them are here today. You might just raise a hand if you're in a care circle. That's wonderful. They are ready. They are ready to listen, to pray for you, to find out, as I am, what you need, and if there are ways that the church can help. As for the hard questions of faith, we do not have to keep those to ourselves either. Very few of us are Peter and Andrew and Philip types who, in this story, they seem to have an easy time following. No questions in their hearts. Now, even if such a description were true of Peter and Andrew and Philip, it simply does not fit with the vast majority of Christians I have known. Certainly not in the United Church of Christ, because we can wonder aloud. We can ask questions, and we do. We can voice doubts and not be ashamed. We know, of course, there have been many occasions through the ages when the church or its preachers have said, now you must believe in this, or you must not believe in that. I've always been interested in the history of Europe in the 16th and 17th centuries. It's an age of tremendous theological ferment, but also horrific religious conflict. Both Catholics and Protestants in those days seemed to be in a competition over who could treat the other most cruelly. Even among the various Protestant sects, disputes could turn violent. Having the wrong beliefs could lead to a death sentence. People who had doubts, they learned to keep quiet, or they were forced into silence. Sadly, that was a legacy of the early Puritans arriving here in the 17th century and establishing, well, congregations even like this one. They wanted greater religious freedom, greater than they had in England, but unfortunately, when they arrived on these shores, they imported some of the same kind of intolerance that was so common in Europe at the time. Well, we thoroughly renounce those practices and have for generations. Jesus did not teach us to be intolerant. His message is filled with promise, not threat. He opens the door for those who have been rejected and never shuts them out. When Philip learns that Nathanael is not going to take his word, that Jesus is the one they've all been waiting for, Philip doesn't cajole. He doesn't argue. He just says, "Come on, come and see." And in truth, that is the only invitation the church ought to make. Come and see. Come and see what we've found. Experience it for yourself. Because experience is the one thing we can always offer. And that's so different, don't you see, than a proof or a logical argument for believing. Well, why do some people think that arguing is the best way to make disciples? Come and see. Join with us. Taste the goodness of the Lord. Try out this thing called faith. And if you do, belief will grow and you will see greater things than these. A great challenge for us, however, is that we do live in an age of deep distrust toward organizations, institutions, and structures of authority. That is especially true among the young. Perhaps for good reason. They've been let down. They are cynical about the government, feeling exploited by businesses and corporations, and skeptical about the church. Nathanael asks, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Nowadays, many ask, "Can anything good come out of the church?" The disheartening number of scandals among church leaders has created widespread damage. There is no way to discount the betrayal and hurt. Catholic, Protestant, megachurch, small-town congregation, all have experienced this grief. Outsiders notice and wonder, what is going on? And it's not just the scandals, it's the politics. In the early 2000s, the Barna polling organization, they first detected a huge shift in the perception of outsiders toward the church. They called it a growing tide of hostility and resentment towards Christianity. They'd never picked up on something like this 10 years before, but in 2007, they reported what would have been unthinkable before, and I'm quoting here. Nearly 2 out of every 5 young outsiders claim to have a bad impression of present-day Christianity. They think that Christians are hypocritical, anti-homosexual, judgmental, and promote a narrow, politically conservative agenda. That's the end of the quote. They haven't rejected the teachings of Jesus. They just believe the churches don't follow them. Well, more recently, there's been a movement somewhat in the other direction. Gen Z has overtaken the baby boomer generation in average monthly church attendance. Interesting, isn't it? Again, this is according to the Barna organization. In the chaotic, confusing times in which we live, significant numbers have found a spiritual home in the rich and ancient rituals of the Orthodox traditions. Many others, young men especially, have gravitated toward various forms of Christian nationalism with its attractive communal spirit and its intoxicating promise to restore men to their rightful place. Much more could be said about this muscular, combative form of Christianity. Deformed Christianity may be a better label, but it is vitally important to focus on that larger number of people who feel excluded. Indeed, those who have been damaged by that vision: women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, men who do not need someone else's brand of masculinity to be fully themselves, people of all shapes and sizes who just happen to feel that diversity, well, is cool. And they see that variety of peoples and cultures, food and music, languages and race, a blessing to be celebrated, not a curse to be suppressed. Philip says to Nathanael, "Come and see." Skeptic though he may be, or just curious by this point, Nathanael goes along. He meets Jesus, and everything changes for him. Everything. Well, we want others to come with us to see Jesus. And they will see Jesus in the welcome that you give them, and as you take an interest in their lives. When you help them find spiritual nourishment in prayer and worship, study and service, the world needs you. And the world needs more churches like this one, because you know that the gospel is all about love, not an exclusive, closed-in kind of love, but a love for everyone, and that we encounter Christ himself whenever we feed the hungry or welcome the stranger or care for the poor. Never underestimate the importance of what is on offer here. The opportunity to see Jesus at work and to know him in your lives. Come and see, we say. Come and see, and bring your questions with you. We will find the answers together. Thanks be to God. Amen. In response to God's grace in our lives, we have the opportunity to offer our gifts to him. These gifts may take many forms. They may take the form of chipping in and helping out at something in the church or in a community organization. It may be the prayers that you offer for those in need, or a visit that you make to someone who is shut in. It may be a kind gesture to a neighbor, or it may be offering financial resources to the church. We will pass an offering plate around very soon, and as we do, regardless of what you put into it, remember the ways that you can give yourself to the Lord. Let us now worship in our offering.